In today's video, we're taking a look at an article on Sportsdom making some predictions regarding trades in the future for the Toronto Maple Leafs. We also have some trade talk around the St. Louis Blues and the Colorado Avalanche. Plus, is the NHL Shutdown going to last beyond the holiday break? Could it be extended till January? We'll discuss all the latest coming up next. So welcome back to another video here at Top Shelf Hockey. As I mentioned, we have a lot to talk about here today between some news and some trade talk, as well as an article around the Leafs, which is kind of a bit of a rumor article, but it's also predictions as well. So we'll get into that here in just a moment. First up, a couple of tidbits of news regarding, of course, the NHL not going to the Olympics. We know that now. So, for example, for Team Canada, GM Doug Armstrong has officially stepped down from that role, and Shane Doan will be taking over the GM role, and Claude Julien is expected to resume being the head coach. So we know that should be the tandem in the U.S. I know it was supposed to be Bill Guerin. Of course, it's now John Van Beesbroek running that team. I haven't heard word exactly who the coach is scheduled to be at this point. If that's been announced, I apologize, but that's a piece of news I have not come across here as of yet. But they're in the process of putting together teams to replace the NHL players. And at this point, we don't have any reason to think that the Olympics will be postponed. You never know. I guess the situation could evolve, and maybe it'll get to that. But right now, it's not looking that way. The IIHF, though, has announced several tournament cancellations for the month of January, including for the second straight year, the U18 women's tournament, which is very unfortunate here. It's the second year in a row. They've been able to find ways to have the U20 World Junior Championships throughout the pandemic, so I don't understand why they can't find a way to make the women's tournament happen. To me, it's a complete injustice. These players deserve better, and I know my voice alone is not really going to, get anything done with the International Ice Hockey Federation, but I really think they need to do better here, and those players deserve better. And if you can find a way to have the World Juniors for the U20 men's, then there's no reason why you can't find a way to do it for the women as well, who deserve that opportunity every step of the way here. So do better, IIHF, and please find a way to make this tournament happen. Now, with the other news, it could be substantial news here, but it's not confirmed yet, so don't quote me on this, but we have information from John Hoven of the Mayor's Manor on Twitter, who covers mostly the LA Kings, but obviously is an NHL insider as well. Posted this on Twitter not long ago, indicating that he's hearing sources that there's a potential the NHL shutdown could be extended till January the 1st, and all the games from the 27th through the 31st could end up being postponed. We already have 50 games postponed at this point, and I believe over those number of days, there's another 50 games that are scheduled. I know there's a lot of hockey that was going to be squeezed in there, but there is talk of that potential shutdown being extended. Now, it's early yet. The NHL is probably going to be making a decision on this, maybe not until like the 25th or 6th. I don't know. I mean, obviously today's Christmas Eve, December the 24th. You would think they'd probably make an announcement even sooner, though, to be honest, because the players are supposed to report on the 26th. If the things are going to be shut down until the 1st, they can have extended time with their families. There's no need to report. I don't know what they're going to do, but there is a possibility, even by the time this makes it to YouTube, maybe that'll be announced. Check the pinned comment if it is. But I know the NHL appears to be extremely concerned about the Winter Classic. Obviously, that's being held this year in Minnesota between the Minnesota Wild and St. Louis Blues. They don't want to cancel this event at all costs. Obviously, it's a huge revenue generator, and a lot of planning and prep and expenses have gone into having this event set up. So that's certainly not something that they want to do, and they want to make sure that it goes off and is played. So that's, I think, part of the reason. And, of course, part of this as well is just to give NHL franchises more time to get players through their protocol situations, to have closer to NHL quality rosters to be able to play. There's been talks too about potential taxi squads or expanded rosters or camp restrictions being given, or limitations within the cap world is a big part of the issue here. So they're negotiating and talking apparently regarding how to kind of work around that, so teams have more flexibility here to ice better rosters when they have players in protocol. So we'll see what happens, but I would not be surprised to see another announcement from the NHL, whether it be sometime today or over the Christmas break here before it's over, indicating it's possible we could see an extended shutdown, or at the very least, even if they don't do that, that they've come to an agreement between the NHL and the PA to figure out having either a taxi squad, expanded roster, or something, so these teams can kind of navigate around their cap issues they're having with all these players in protocol. And hopefully, as we go through this, and players start to be released from protocol once they've got their time in here into early January, hopefully we don't see another huge upswing of players going in so that we can kind of, have them resume here and have, like I said, mostly NHL players on the ice instead of all these teams kind of icing, close to AHL quality and caliber teams at times. So we'll see where this goes. So a piece of news to be keeping an eye on. Now, when it comes to the trade rumors of the day, first up, I want to take a look at the Blues of Vladimir Tarasenko. Mike McKenna, former NHL player, now analyst, works for dailyfaceoff.com, has a recent article and also commented on this on a recent podcast. Kind of makes a lot of sense what he's saying here. We know that Vladimir Tarasenko has not rescinded his trade request from the Blues. We've heard multiple NHL sources discuss this situation, even as recently as the last couple of weeks. So with no change being made there, we know that Tarasenko and the Blues have had a decent season so far. He got off to a good start. He cooled off, but he's certain sense picked back up again. He's playing relatively well. Doesn't appear to be any issues with his healthy shoulder. Like, everything's looking good so far. But we know that his main kind of beef with the team is how the previous 2 shoulder surgeries were handled. And it doesn't look like, at least at this point, that he's kind of changed his mind on wanting out of there. But at the same time, he's been doing well with his teammates. He seems to be handling things well, playing well. The team's doing okay. So McKenna's argument is, with all that in mind, why would you want to leave? He's now been playing on a line recently with Barbashev and Buchnevich. So the 3 players, kind of have a Russian trio here together that are doing extremely well. Why would you want to break that up? Why would you want to move on? It's not guaranteed to be greener on the other side. They always say the grass is greener, but there's certainly no guarantee of that. Of course, he has a lot of control over where he could end up as well because of the trade protection in his contract. So it just doesn't make sense. Between the cap hit and everything, to me, I've already said before, I think it's pretty unlikely that, regardless of how Tarasenko feels about it, if the Blues are winning and they're projecting towards the playoffs, they're not going to want to move this guy unless somebody comes to them with this trade offer that they could move Tarasenko and get another quality player that they're confident that they're not going to lose any production. Then yeah, maybe they'll do it. But the odds of that happening are probably pretty slim to none. So to me, this is a trade that, if it does happen, would be better slated and more likely for the next offseason. But will that even happen? Will he change his mind? If things are going well, can they make amends and amend this relationship here based on the past injury history? I mean, to me, McKenna makes a ton of sense here, and I do think it's pretty unlikely at this point we're going to see a Tarasenko trade, and it only makes sense that he should be feeling better. And really, considering how everything's going, if I'm the Blues, I'm trying to mend things here so that you can kind of ride things out. He's only got 1 more year left on his contract. At that point, he can be free to make his own decision and see where it goes. But to me, a Tarasenko trade does seem pretty unlikely at this point. When it comes to the Avalanche, though, they're another team that started slow but have found their groove here heading into this recent NHL pause here before the holiday break. They've been winning a lot of hockey games, get themselves in a much better standing position, but it is believed in a recent article from The Athletic, which makes a lot of sense, that they're more than likely going to want to add on the blue line ahead of the NHL playoffs. Now, of course, right now they have some key injuries, the guys like Bowen Byram and Ryan Murray that are out indefinitely, and of course, their futures could be better determined well ahead of the deadline because it's still a long ways out. But given what they ran into last year in the playoffs, and if they're going to run into teams like Vegas again, for example, which is pretty likely, they need to have a big, strong, mobile defenseman. I mean, we know that they have guys like Makar, and they have Jerard, and they had Byron, and obviously if he can get back healthy, that'd make a big difference. They're all guys that are not huge, but they're great skaters, very dynamic, good puck movers, can chip in on the offense. They added some size back there as well. They have, obviously, other guys like McDermott, Johnson, etc., but they can use some more help back there. If they can find themselves another third pair guy who can log, 15 to 17 minutes a night and be just that steady the back there on the blue line to kind of stabilize things, that stabilizer defenseman, to me, that's what they need. Somebody who can maybe be a little bit of a combination of a little bit offensive, but not necessarily anybody who needs to carry that load. They don't need that when you have the other dynamic offensive D-men that they have on that team. So to me, it makes a lot of sense that they're another team looking for that. So like I said before, guys like Ben Chiarot, and I'm not sure he's going to be their guy. I'm not linking them together or anything like that. But the reason why you hear a player like Chiarot attracting a first-round pick as a return to Montreal is there's not a lot of rental defensemen out there that make a lot of sense for a lot of teams. There's not a lot of higher quality ones on the market. So when you look to a team like the Avalanche and other teams like the Rangers or the Bruins or anybody else who was likely to be in a similar boat, they're likely going to have some bidding wars. So I think a return on a guy like him would be pretty big and very well will be the reason why they probably get a bigger return than they would have in other years. I mean, I know a guy like Klingberg in Dallas is another guy to watch too. He's obviously on an expiring contract, and Dallas has been winning lately. Like, they've been a little bit of hot and cold, right? You don't know what you're going to get with Dallas sometimes. And, he's a guy that I don't expect they'll trade if they're going to be in the playoff hunt. But we're still a little bit ways out before they'll probably make a decision on that. So we'll see where this goes. But expect Colorado to want to add on the blue line if everything keeps projecting the way it is ahead of the deadline. Now, as I mentioned as well, I found an interesting article on sportsnet.ca by author Luke Fox about the Maple Leafs making a few trade predictions as well as some other predictions for the upcoming playoff season into the offseason. So, of course, we know that the Maple Leafs are having a real solid start to the year. At this point, they're certainly projected to be definitely be a playoff team, if not be possibly a division winner, maybe be the top team in their conference. It's really hard to say. Lots of hockey left to play, but things are certainly gone extremely positive so far for the blue and white. Now, a couple of things that he talks about. One is the impending free agency of goalie Jack Campbell. Now, of course, we know Campbell's having a phenomenal season so far, right? He's played extremely well during his entire tenure with the Maple Leafs, making a measly 1.6. He's going to be due for a monster raise. Of course, we already know, it's been well documented for a long time, that they have a lot of money tied up in their top four forwards with Marner, Tavares, Matthews, and Nylander, of course. And, of course, they signed Morgan Rielly to a big-ticket deal as well this past, not too long ago, like this current season. He gets a big extension, which kicks in next year, to keep him in the fold. Now, do they have the ability to keep Campbell? They do, but it's going to take some cap manipulating to make it happen. He's likely going to be in line for similar goaltenders that we've seen on free agency, like Grubauer and Markstrom. The way he's played, they're getting deals like 6x6. Can you imagine that Campbell would be getting anything similar to that? I mean, he's 29 years old. He's a bit of a late bloomer, but considering his age since he's been drafted, he's only made less than $5 million. So this is going to be his one big ticket item to be able to cash in on here. So as much as he loves his teammates in Toronto, and as much as he's enjoyed his time there, and I'm sure that he appears to be a loyal guy and would love to stay, he needs to get paid. And it's just that simple, and you would not blame him for taking the money if another team throws a ridiculous amount at him on the market, because you know teams are going to be looking to do that. There's always bound to be a top goaltender that makes an obscene amount. Like we saw, like I said, the contracts like Markstrom and Grubauer got, like he could definitely get that on the market. At least I think he could. So the prediction from Luke Fox is they do find a way to sign Campbell, but it's likely going to mean a combination of players being shown the door via trade, like possibly Alex Kerfoot or maybe even Jake Muzzin. They might have to find a way to cut some money here to make that happen. So let me know your thoughts on the Campbell situation. Does he stay? And what are the cap casualties looking like for making that happen? Nextly, he predicts that the Leafs will indeed win a playoff round this year, at least one, maybe more. He feels that they're probably going to be able to go at least the second or maybe third round. He feels they're going to have a tough time getting out of the East, which I will agree with. They had some really tough competition between like the Florida Panthers, the Lightning, the Hurricanes especially. The Rangers are looking real good. Hard to say who else emerges here the rest of this year, but it's certainly not going to be easy. But the fact that they're trending towards possibly having a number one spot in their division should give them a wild card opponent, and it might make the best, best case scenario for a playoff matchup where they have the best chance to win compared to what they've had here in the last few years. So the fact is that I think this prediction also is very, very likely to happen. So let me know your thoughts. Do you think the Leafs can finally get over the hump this year and win at least one playoff round? But the other big part of it here I want to really focus on here was the additions at the deadline. He doesn't feel like they're going to be subtracting at all. He feels they're going to add, but they might have to add by subtracting, and he feels that the blue line is the most likely scenario that they go after here. Likely a top four right shot defenseman, which is something that seems to have eluded them, from making that acquisition here the past couple of years. It's obviously been something that's been discussed heavily, and this is going to be the year that they maybe make that move, especially with Campbell's pending UFA status. They're going to have a tough offseason again, and it's believed that they're likely going to be making some trades involving some future, prospect and draft currency. The main roster players that Fox feels are most susceptible to be packaged up with some of these future assets include Travis Dermott and Justin Hall, who we've talked about in recent weeks. As being trade bait, considering their struggles and inconsistent play this year. Now, a couple of players that he also mentions to be included with them, which might not make Leaf fans too happy, but if you're going to make a big move, you have to give up some value. And we're looking at prospects like Nick Robertson or Rodion Amirov or the first-round pick. A combination of one of those three assets, along with our Dermott or Hall, might be what it takes to get a deal done. So players that are mentioned here as being potential targets would be like Mark Giordano in Seattle on a pending UFA contract. You got Josh Manson in Anaheim, who I've kind of advocated for years would be great in Toronto, and even Ben Chiarot in Montreal, which might be a little bit less likely given the division rivalness, but Montreal is not projected to be a playoff team. They may not care. They're probably just going to want the best deal, especially with Chiarot being a pending unrestricted free agent as well. So any of those guys to me would be a good fit. Probably Manson being the best one, considering he's a legit right shot defenseman, whereas Gio and Chiarot could play the right side, but to me, Manson would be the better one of the three, at least in my opinion. But to me, they're going to have to give up some currency here. Will Kyle Dubas and Shanahan continue to go for it here and trade more future assets to give this team an extra asset to win? I wouldn't be shocked at all. I think they understand here that they need to win, and they need to win soon before the cap, becomes more of an issue. But, if they can hang on here with this group together mostly for the next few years, we should hopefully see in 2 or 3 years down the road, see a fairly significant cap increase if we can get through this pandemic and stop having shutdowns and everything else, that we can get enough of an increase in the cap spending that they won't have those issues keeping the team together beyond that. It will stand a much better chance to open their window up longer. But that's going to happen to make that happen for the Leafs. If we end up in a situation where the cap stays flat even longer for a lot of teams that are spending heavily like they are, that is very much a big problem to have. So let me know your thoughts on everything discussed down below in the comments. We'll discuss further. If you're new to this channel, make sure you subscribe and stick around. We'll keep you up to date with all the latest news, rumors, and analysis on all 32 NHL teams. Thank you for watching, and I'll catch you next time.